Well, here we are. Just like that, the 2022 transfer window slam shut. The Backpass is doing a special transfer window wrap up, and we are joined by a special panel today. We've had to do a Barcelona and pull some special levers for this one. But we've got Mike Coolum, Ashish, Kevin, Adam, and Shivank with us, and we're going to wrap up all of the big stories. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Great.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to this.
No more Frankie de Jong for 6 months.
Hey,
it started.
Just forgot about him, Shiva. Just now.
It didn't even take a minute. I mean, I've got the script written up, right? This running order, and Shivank just gets straight into it.
I had to pull that lever.
So have you guys taken the live camera feeds down yet from his hotel rooms and agents' balconies and all of that?
Ashish, we're going to leave that up because I have a feeling we're going to be doing this all over again next summer.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into it. Ashish, we'll come to you first. Arsenal sitting pretty top of the table, 5 out of 5, playing Man United next. What do you make of their window?
Look, I mean, I've got mixed feelings. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of goodwill around the transfer window and how much money's gone into it. But and obviously with the new signings like Gabriel Jesus coming in, and he's made an instant impact. We went in hard. We went in early, and it's given a lot of those players that have come in time to gel. And then also, obviously, the likes of Zinchenko as well. He's been invaluable as well to what he's brought in and how he's fit into the club. That's all well and good. But I do wonder about the finances, though. I mean, we've obviously posted losses over the last 2 seasons, 2 or 3 windows. And there's rumors of UEFA and their FFP rules as well. So my concern here is that, as of the close of window, we've let about 33 players go. That's including academy players as well. And in total, we've probably got incoming about 10 mil, excluding any loan sign-on fees, which is very little compared to what we've got outgoing. So that begs the obvious question as to where this money's come from. And the obvious answer is from the owners. Now, the problem I've got with 100% ownership like we do at the moment is that a lot of the finances seem to get sealed, so the details aren't available. So we don't know if the money is coming from their own coffers, if there's bank loan, or if they've gone to a loan shark somewhere, and pretty soon they'll be turning up with Emirates and ripping off seats and stuff.
Have Arsenal considered signing the Barcelona accountants?
Oh, look, with the Spanish connection, obviously, maybe, but I would rather not go down that path, and I just don't want to get into levers and all of that kind of jazz. Moving on, so I'd like to keep it clean. I'd like to think that we've got our own bean counters who are clued on, who have got more information that's available than to us regular Joes, So I mean, I do wonder. I mean, even if the owners have put up all that money, which they most likely have, what does that mean for the club moving forward? I mean, does that then mean that they've got us on a very short leash? And because we've got this stigma around the club where we're fighting hard to move players on, even with us ripping up deals for contracts for the likes of Pepe, and I guess Pepe's gone on loan, but there's been other players who have gone out and have had their contract basically torn up, and that's seen us no money coming in. Yet we've had to buy, we've had to shell out big time to get what Arteta really wanted. And yes, it's very encouraging to see in terms of the results on the field. But then there's the obvious dark spot in the whole window, and I guess the last 2 3 windows as to the financial sides as well, which does concern me a little.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to get thoughts on this, guys. Arsenal obviously off to a good start. My impressions are Jesus has obviously had an instant impact, which is great on the surface of it. Mike, do you think the depth is there at Arsenal?
Well, I guess it remains to be seen once injuries start creeping in. I think they're definitely looking like they've brought through some of their younger players to start producing results now, the likes of Odegaard, and you're really starting to see them starting to flourish, I guess. I would be curious to see how they would handle once you get into the cup competitions and
Mm.
Yep.
week in week multiple
Yep.
times a week, right?
Yep. Great point.
The World Cup window will give a bit of respite, and we can probably reevaluate there. But I'm quietly confident for Arsenal's sake that they will do well. And just to pick up on Ashisha's point on the finances side of things, I kind of wonder, maybe cynically, if the owners have looked at the high price that Chelsea went for recently and thought, well, if we just spend a little bit of money on it, do a few renovations on the squad, we can maybe sell off Arsenal for 5 billion and make away like bandits.
Go on, Ashish.
Yeah, that was another concern that I've had. Like with the finances, sooner or later, the owners would kind of want to return. And if we're not back in the Champions League, and if we're not starting to see our returns on their investment, they then kind of go, okay. I mean, they're always open to external economic pressures as well. So them being based in America, obviously, and having other franchises as well. So what does that mean then? Are we on the market? Will we have any buyers? I know last season the Spotify guy, forget his name, he came in quite hard trying to buy the club off the Cronkies, but I guess his deal never was considered for one reason or another. But I mean, this could also mean that the owners then go, if the money's not coming in from commercial deals or whatever it is, and if there's more economic pressures here and there, they might go, okay, we now need to get rid of Saka for whatever fee he goes for, and he will fetch a good price as well, and they know it. They're pretty clued on about stuff like that, I guess, with Josh being quite heavily involved at board level and various other levels as well. And then you'll have the likes of Martinelli and who knows what else. So it's assets that we've got in young players, and the vision has been put down by Edu and Ateta to get these players in and get them playing at a level where their skills are utilized and they're playing regularly as well, which means they are in everyone's eye, I guess, in England and beyond England as well. So what happens then? I mean, if they go, look, we got to make some of that money back. Saka goes, Martinelli goes, and I guess whoever else is available just in the shop window. That's a concern I've got.
Adam?
Yeah, just I'm going back to that squad size. I think this is a bit of a weird season. That Winter World Cup.
Yeah.
And so I think there's only like 13 games left until the actual
break.
World Cup starts. So with squad depth, maybe clubs are thinking, let's just grind it out until the World Cup happens. There's going to be a little bit of an off-season break. Most players at big clubs, they will go away. But even when they come back, I'm sure there'll be a rest period or some sort of, a little mini preseason.
So Adam, are you saying Arsenal aren't going to crumble in January this time?
I've
Isn't that Spurs? Yeah, true. No, but Arsene Wenger's not in charge, so yeah. So no, but I mean,
No, but
yeah.
good point though. Yeah, good point.
I think it's a bit of a weird season. Clubs is like Newcastle. We've got a few injuries. Even other clubs that might have injuries. They're probably thinking, we don't need to sign too many players, and we'll just go for quality over quantity. Unless you're Nottingham Forest.
Yeah.
In which case, you've signed 21 players.
21 players.
Obviously, that theory of making it through to the World Cup, that didn't quite sink through to them.
No. I'm sure that their sporting director's playing Football Manager, not.
Oh, goodness me.
Honestly.
Goodness me.
Yeah. So. But yeah.
Ashish, we'll come back to Arsenal later on. But just in wrapping up this Arsenal section, was there a realistic player that you would have liked to have signed that perhaps didn't happen?
Well, a player aside, I would like us to hire someone who's got a big bottle of magic spray and copious amounts of deep heat and a beanbag. And 24/7, he's in charge of running after Thomas Partey. Because our midfield does rely on him quite heavily, and he's been on and off. He went to the AFCON last, I think in Jan. He did well there, came back, did well, and picked up an injury, and then was gone. And our midfield did suffer. So jokes aside, though, my personal view is that we're missing a bit of height up front. So when we have got the likes of Tierney, Martinelli, Cedric, and the right wingers Saka and Co crossing balls, and a lot of them seem to be going over a certain height, and there's no one there to sort of nick in and head in. So there's no contact. I mean, we all know how big and burly a lot of these Premier League centre halves are, right? So they just dwarf us a lot of times. So I would have liked someone, and I know we did try and go for him, someone like in the mold of Vahalovic. I think he went to Juventus.
I thought you were going to say Chris Wood.
Oh yeah, I mean, Chris Wood, maybe not. Has he still got his legs with him? He's gone to Newcastle.
Well, I think when we cover Newcastle, Adam's going to have plenty to say.
Yeah, so I mean, I would have liked someone with that build. Obviously, Haaland. I mean, there were jokes with Odegaard trying to kind of put a shoulder on him if he could reach him that high up. Anyway, so trying to get him to come over, but that was never ever going to happen. So not realistic.
Yeah.
But realistically, if we were looking in that mold, someone who's quite mobile, he's aggressive, he's got that presence in the box going forward, then I would have actually liked us to test Fulham's Resolver Mitrovic. I mean, he's obviously got the aggression. He's got the presence as well, and he knows where the goal is. He's mobile as well, and he's physical.
Yeah.
So just a plan B in terms of forwards. That is what I would have liked us to go for. But then again, the cloud of financial fair play that's hanging over us, we couldn't go any further than that.
Is FFP still a thing?
not if your name is Barcelona, Real Madrid,
Newcastle.
Hey, clever accounting is a thing, not FFP.
Clever accounting.
All right, Ashish, gentlemen, we've got to move on from Arsenal. Ashish mentioned Erling Haaland, and Shivank really did draw the short straw on this one. Shivank, we'll come to you on the City window.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of their spending?
Their spending? I'm sorry, that just sounds like a leading question. Like 80 million on Holland, 100 million on Calvin Phillips, throw in Akanji. I don't know how many fullbacks they signed this year. They've got a backup keeper. Sorry, what FFP?
Exactly.
Although they have made a profit this transfer window.
Yeah, of course. When you're bankrolled by a state nation, you always make a profit.
Every time we pick up the pump at the gas station, we're doing City a favor. So I think we should be thinking about that a little bit more.
all the Saudis.
Hmm. Look, but finances aside, I think with the way Holland's going, he's going to score 50 goals by the time
Mm.
the World Cup rolls around. Not even the end of the season, he's going to score 50
Mm,
goals.
mm.
And Syria going to run away with the league. It's basically as simple as that.
Well, so I don't think City are playing Chelsea twice before the break.
Honestly, I hope we don't play them at all, given the dire strait we're in and the situation they're in.
Yeah.
It's like Holland has to stand somewhere and the ball will be right next to him and the goal will be an open goal. And our strikers need to stand somewhere and there'll be 10 people in front of them
Yeah.
protecting the ball.
Yeah. I mean, Haaland, obviously, I guess a bit like Gabby Jesus started absolutely on fire. I think he's broken the record for the most goals in August. But looking at the rest of the squad, right? So looking at that midfield, and you mentioned the fullbacks. Do we think they're looking a bit light in those areas? Because we know they're going to be going for all four trophies again.
Hmm. Well, can we already discount them from the Champions League?
Oh yeah. Look, they're getting knocked out by Spurs this year.
Nah, because Pep's going to overthink. Now, I think you make a very valid point, Gurpreet. I think they are still light on the fullback position. They've signed a couple of young kids, and I can't seem to recall their names.
Alvarez
Now,
up front.
Sergio
Alvarez up
Gomez.
front. Yeah, Sergio Gomez, and they've got Pedro Porro, who they've signed. Oh, well, he's come back from loan, but basically that's it. So they've got, uh, and Mendy's obviously not playing this year.
That's right. That's
And
right.
they've got João Cancelo, who can basically play any position on the pitch.
Mm.
They've got an aging Kyle Walker. So I think if there's one place where City might feel a bit light, it's the fullback position. But also, we know Pep loves his fullback. So, yeah.
I just to jump in there when we played them at St James not too long ago. Kyle Walker, he got destroyed. I know St Maximum had a great game. He would have probably destroyed any fullback on that day, but and Kyle Walker just looks old.
Mm,
I just think he's he must be at least 30 now.
mid 30s, yeah.
He had that blistering pace, but I just don't think that acceleration's there anymore. And I think that could be a big liability against top teams going forward.
Adam, I know this is right down your alley, and probably your best place to talk about this because your team's played them already. Do we think with Haaland there's a slight change in tactics here? So we know Pep likes his fullbacks to basically invert and become playmakers in midfield. But when you've got a player like Haaland who obviously likes to run beyond and he likes the ball played through, you probably don't need the fullbacks involved as much. And we've in a way already seen that with Cancelo and Walker. Like they're not as involved in the playmaking. Do we think that whole having six fullbacks all costing £80 million is less important when you've got a player like Haaland?
Yeah, I think it is because you remember last year they played with like a false nine.
That's right.
And
That's
so
right.
they basically had six midfielders, and they were all just trying to ticky taka through the defense and score a goal that way. But there was a crazy stat I think for this season with Haaland where he barely touches the ball outside the box.
Yep.
And I think he scored with his first touch against Nottingham Forest the last game. He barely touches the ball. I think their game plan is just to open up space, try to get as close to the box as possible, and then find Haaland basically if you can, or use him as a decoy to open up space for other. I think their tactics have definitely changed, and it looks scary to be honest. It looks, especially with him, because you give him one chance and he's going to put it away. So yeah, against us, they honestly at times they toyed with us. They could have probably scored more goals. Just last ditch defending, but yeah, as the more they play together, I think the better they'll get. So it's scary thought.
Go on, Ashish.
Yeah, can I just ask what City's plan beyond Haaland? So this,
Mm.
I mean, the English Premier League fixture being as congested as it gets, in a normal season, let alone a World Cup season. So fixtures are going to come in thick and fast between now and World Cup, and even after that. So if the unthinkable happens and he is unavailable for a lengthy period of time, so what's Pep's plan B in terms of forwards?
I,
After you.
I was going to say that Julian Alvarez guy.
He's a player, isn't he?
He's class because they played together against Forest, and Haaland scored a hat trick, and Alvarez got 2 goals. But I'm sure Alvarez can play through the middle as well. So that they're going to interchange, I think. So I think that's
Basically,
why a
then.
lot of people are saying that City won the window, because they've recruited the weakness that they had over the summer with
Agree.
2 great
Agree.
players.
Agree.
Yeah.
That's basically it. And if all else fails, Pep can always play 6 midfielders and 10 fullbacks.
I mean,
Like
it's not like he's got 100 million euro or pound midfielder sitting on the bench that he could play as a false 9 in Grealish.
Yeah, that guy.
That guy,
What
right?
about him altogether?
Yeah.
Where's Mike Lawson when you need him?
I know, right? So I mean, I think look, it's scary, but a question that we can come back around to at a later point. I do wonder, when you look at some of the more sort of innovative managers around Europe, particularly in the Champions League, but also in the Premiership with Tuchel and Klopp, when your game plan is focused so much around Haaland, and as Adam mentioned, I think in the Forest game it was 64% of his touches were inside the box, right? I do wonder if it makes them easier to defend in a way, right? If he is your outlet, right? Because I know whenever we've played them, the difficulty has been the inverted fullbacks. But I do wonder if in all of this, when you come up against a more pragmatic manager, if that is going to end up being a bit of a weakness. Now, talking about pragmatic managers, Adam, we're going to come to the team that you love to hate. We've also got
Tottenham.
Ashish,
Yeah.
Mike, and Shavank. Spurs. 7 players signed. They got their business done nice and early. As a Newcastle fan who has a rather strange hatred for Spurs, what did you think of their spending?
I actually thought they did a great job. As much as it pains me to say, they've recruited really well. I think going back to the start of the transfer window, I think I recall that the owners or the club had a $150 million capital raised just for the transfers, and I actually listened to a YouTube video of some Spurs fans talking about their transfer window, and they were actually disappointed that they didn't spend more than what they actually did.
Wow.
So that's
Getting greedy already.
yeah,
As
kind of,
usual.
yeah. So I mean,
Hey, did they put out a DVD about the transfer window?
Have we won the transfer window?
Yeah. The full story.
It's coming. It's going to be a Netflix special.
All or nothing.
Yeah.
I.e. nothing.
But yeah, like someone mentioned, they did get their business done early. They got Basuma from Brighton. I think, honestly, I think they were the only ones bidding for him, and they snapped him up real quick.
Absolute steal.
I mean,
25 million.
Yeah, Kevin and I were talking about it. I think, and look, we'll come to this later on, but I think it's criminal for a club like United to let Basuma walk away so easily to Spurs. It's a bit like when Chelsea got Kante a few years back. We didn't even bid, right? Because whatever, right? I think it's criminal. The number of top 6 clubs that needed a defensive midfielder, including Chelsea, right? If we look at this deal that you guys have done with Zakaria, why weren't Chelsea in for Basuma?
Yeah, I agree. Especially because Kante's been injured a lot. Recently,
honestly, I am astounded no one else bid for him.
Yeah, especially with us as well. I mean, we would probably seen Partey's injury record and how often he's not available, and the backup being El Nani, and then after that we've got Lokanga in there as well. So some experience would have been nice. I'm
Yeah,
surprised we didn't
yeah.
go and find him either.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A-
totally agree, Ashish. Totally agree.
And the other one I'm really surprised about, Adam, I know you rate him, but Ivan Perisic. I mean,
Mm,
Yeah.
a
mm.
couple of games, but what a player.
I was just about to mention him. Exactly. And they got him for free.
They got
Yeah,
him for free. Yeah.
Yeah. So
What
that's
was
just,
everyone else doing?
I don't know. Well, obviously, it's the Paratici, the sporting director,
sporting director.
and Conte's connections. Obviously, that helped. So, yeah, to get him on a free with all that experience, all that class, yeah, it's
And he's a serial trophy winner. I think he's won more trophies in the last 5 years than Spurs have in their entire history.
Oh.
So that experience is critical for them.
yeah.
Ouch. Ouch.
I mean,
But
I,
but sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just saying I can't, not take pot shots at Spurs. It's just
No,
not fair.
I'm loving it. So keep keep it
Siobhan,
up.
you don't sound like a Chelsea fan who's just lost to Southampton.
Yeah, we'll be
You,
fine. We'll be fine. We'll, I tell you what, we'll still finish the season with more finals or trophies than Spurs will.
oh yes, yes, yes. No arguing on that one. Adam, the other one that I found really interesting with Spurs, and this is just watching them early doors. We know Kane and Son had that incredible partnership for most of the last 3 seasons. Son, I think, has started the season slowly.
Mm.
Do you think Richarlison's played a role there?
I do, and Perisic, I think, almost to the point. I think from the YouTube video of the Spurs fans that I saw, they're almost playing like a 3-5-2 sort of situation. Sometimes it changes a lot. And Son, he can play striker, but he's probably better off just behind the striker
Just
making
behind,
those
yeah.
runs.
Mm.
And yeah, I think Richarlison definitely, because of his price tag as well. If I paid £60 million for him, obviously they're going to have to play him quite a bit. And yeah, I who knows? A lot of players this season have started slowly. Salah hasn't really caught fire. There's other players as well that really aren't. So maybe they're just, I don't know, early season sort of situation with Son. Son's a class player. He'll get there eventually, but yeah, you could be right. Richarlison could make an impact on him, but he's a good backup for Harry Kane.
Was
Yeah.
Son away on military service in the summer, in the Northern Hemisphere summer?
No,
Or was it last year?
he avoided it. Yeah, he avoided it because they won I think, the Asian Games.
Asian.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and they went all out to win it just to avoid the military service.
They had to pull some levers.
Yeah, that's a great strategy.
Seems to be working.
All right, Adam, I think we'll spend as much time on Spurs as they've got trophies, but before we move on past them, do you think they make the top 4 this year?
Yeah.
Oh, ouch. Ouch.
Because Conte's a class manager. Honestly, he's changing their mentality a little bit, and they're getting hard to beat. So, especially with that Chelsea game that they drew 2-2 with, despite I think Chelsea played a lot better and
Played them off the park, I thought.
They did, but they got the draw.
Yeah.
And I think that's down to the manager and his mentality of the players. So.
Oh,
Yeah,
and
I
now
think-
that is a great segue. The manager and his mentality. So, to everyone listening, we're doing this in the order that these teams lie on the table at the moment. And Kevin would have been going last 2 weeks ago, but as it turns out, United are 5th. So, Kevin, I know you've been very quiet so far, my friend. What have you made of the shambles that is Man United in this transfer window?
Yeah, I was thinking about how I'm going to phrase this. That's why I've been quiet, because in my head, how do I split this up? I got to split this up in probably the off-field issues and the on-field issues. The could have been scenario, which is like as Shivank so callously decided to introduce at the very start of this stream. The whole FDJ situation is it's unwarranted pain. I feel I support enough bad teams to not have to go through with that.
I feel he's just in denial because it's not like Chelsea didn't chase him either, right? Like, you know, they're laughing at us, but they missed out on him too.
Yeah, but we got Dennis Zakaria, so it's not like we stayed still.
Need I say more?
Did Barcelona try to sign Zakaria last minute?
Hey, I tell you what, if we had started the Zakaria process 5 days ago, they would have snapped him up somehow.
But how does that work with Chelsea signing Aubameyang off Barcelona? Like, do they suddenly decide they don't want to sell him because Chelsea are interested?
Yeah.
Well, was this just Chelsea trying to bluff Barcelona into a player they didn't actually want?
I mean, he's taken on the number 9, so I have zero faith in Aubameyang to begin with. The only way is up now.
But look, we're much like United. We're going off into a tangent and not staying on topic. Back to Kevin and United.
Okay, so what I'll say is, and Goopy, we sort of touched on this beforehand. If the whole FDJ situation didn't occur and we didn't look at the wage bill and the transfer fees and all that kind of stuff, and we just went down this list and said, okay, Casemiro, Martinez, Ericsson, Malacia, and Anthony, and a loan from, it's a loan, Dubravka from Newcastle. He's probably not going to play much at all, if anything. But just that in itself, at the start of the transfer window, I would have been reasonably happy with that. And I would have said, okay, let's take it into this new era and we'll see what ETH can do with this team and we can go from there. But then there's a couple of other things that sort of fell apart because I don't see how a lot of these players fit. I feel like Casemiro is a how do I describe it? He's a great player in a position that we need. Probably not the best version of the player that we need in an age bracket that we're not looking for, right? So he's latter end of his career. He's a great player, probably not going to be here for long enough to have a huge influence or change our fortunes over the long term. And that's what I'm looking at. I don't want this to be a short-term building project. As we've dealt with enough crap for the last since Fergie left, basically.
10 years.
So 10 years of this.
Thanks, Shravank. I forgot it was 10 years.
Can I quickly jump in? I think didn't Ten Hag say he wanted to change the mentality and he wanted to bring in winners like Casemiro? So maybe that's a short-term sort of strategy in order to change the mentality of the club.
But I mean, Adam, I think this is where Kevin makes a good point. Like, and again, that the Casemiro signing to me, even though it is, I agree, not the ideal age bracket, but the character makes complete sense. But what doesn't make sense is how you go from De Jong to, hang on, let me sit straight before I say this. Adrian Rabiot and then Casemiro in the space of 3 days. I do not get that.
Yeah.
My funny suspicion is that the whole transfer saga was happening in Vegas, depending upon how the chips were falling.
and look, the thing is, had it not been for Rabiot's mum, you'd probably all be laughing at us right now because we wouldn't have signed Casemiro.
Yeah, it would have been funny, honestly.
Go on, Mike. He's Mike's gonna say something right now.
So for me, I think United's recent performances have got nothing to do with the transfers or even the coach. It's got to do with two things, two players specifically. Maguire, and I've said this for the longest time, probably well before he actually went completely off the rails, but taking him out of the squad, particularly taking the captaincy, on-field captaincy away from him, I think has made a huge difference for United. You've seen all the videos, and I'm sure everyone's seen the things where he kicked Pogba in the head, or he's taken out players and put others opposition attackers through on goal. But it's just the lack of confidence that you have in him there, and I think the captaincy's been a huge burden on him. And I think if you can actually make Bruno or say a Rashford your captain, I think that will make a big difference. And the other thing, of course, would be Ronaldo. Not starting him has made a huge difference because you've got it's really putting faith in the other players that they can get the job done as a team rather than putting it all in the individuals. So I think if you keep to those things, keep Maguire and Ronaldo on the bench, I think the good results will continue on. And I think those things together would make a bigger difference than any of these new transfers that we've been discussing.
Yeah, the off field stuff, as I mentioned, if we separate that, yeah, that's not it's not great for like if you're a fan of Man U to listen to that kind of stuff. You don't want to hear that Ronaldo sitting by himself in the cafeteria when you're what 4 down to Brentford. That's not ideal. It sort of speaks to probably a cultural problem that's been there since Fergie left, basically. I reckon. But and the the actual transfer that's I guess gotten a little bit under my skin is the James Garner one to Everton. I know that he wasn't going to get minutes, and we want the best for these guys to a certain extent. We want them to play, but if we couldn't sort out some kind of loan deal, because I feel like out of the talent that we have so little youth talent to begin with, to be shipping them off, for a little bit of cash to another squad in the Premier League who we're probably going to play against, and now based on where we're at, where we're actually playing realistically in the mid-table, um, I don't think that's a good idea, and I don't think that's something that Man U sort of like. We never used to trade players with Arsenal. Like when do we do that? Whoever we're competing against, we wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Silvestri.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the last one that came to
that's the
mind.
last one.
Oh,
Yeah.
Van Persie.
Wasn't he free?
Who's that?
Come on.
I feel like that was a Trojan horse, though.
But actually, Kevin, I think you do raise some very good points, and just coming back to the Ghana thing, I, I I have a feeling the Ghana transfer has to do with us trying to almost make up for the overspending we've had to do later on in this window. So I mean, and again, this kind of goes back to what you said a few minutes ago. If you look at United's transfers individually, I think all of those deals could have been done very quickly, right? Like you look at the Malacia transfer, we ended up hijacking Leon because they almost signed him, right? So
Yep.
when we decided to move for him, we did it very quickly. Ericsson was a free agent. That should have never taken as long as it did. Martinez is, again, a really weird one because he started off really well, right? But we were initially in for Timber, right? It was only when we couldn't get Timber that we went for Martinez. And when we went for him, we got it done really quickly. Casemiro, we've just gone through the whole FDJ, Rabiot, bloody triangle thing. Another one that's been very similar is Anthony, right? We could have got him early on in the window for 20 million euros less, but we hesitated. And then when we went in for him, we got the deal done really quickly. And obviously Dubravka, like the moment Nick Pope signed for Newcastle, we knew he was going to be the number 2. We didn't have to wait this long. And I think if we had got this business sorted out earlier, we wouldn't be sitting with 2 losses against Brighton and Brentford, which was, I think, a direct result of ETH not having the players he needed. I think all of these things make this window completely farcical for me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
in summary, New Year, same United.
Plus,
Hey, look, what I gotta say here is that there's striking resemblances to what we did over the last couple of seasons here as well. Unhappy players, high-paid players that just do not want to tune up and spend their time in the cafeteria doing God knows what. Someone's dog's sick, they can't come in, they come in late. It's just
You're
stuff
talking
like
about
that.
Aubameyang.
Yeah, that guy, he's dead to me now. So just
We're gonna pick up Aubameyang in a minute, Mike. Get ready.
it's just stuff like that. But then again, with ETH, I think he's got the right attitude and the right skills in place where he is not afraid to make those tough decisions. If he sees that players are underperforming, just like with Maguire, he's just out of the team. If you're not doing what the manager wants you to do, then off you go. Pretty much, I'll get someone else into the same job. Pretty much.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Kevin.
So-
Kevin, coming back to you. before we move past United, I got to ask you this. Give me a score out of 10 for the window and a player that you would have liked us to sign realistically that we didn't.
Okay, so out of 10, I'd have to say with all the off-field stuff, it's a 5. It's a pass mark, I reckon. Not a not a uni pass mark, just a 50% pass mark.
Yeah.
Players, okay. I would have liked us to and I've mentioned this previously on the podcast, to sign Sangare. I think somebody like him in that age bracket to sit behind whoever we brought in to develop, that would have been ideal. I think you mentioned. I'm trying to go back. Was it Digba or
Ndidi from Leicester.
Ndidi? Yes,
Yep.
that's right. Yeah, he was another good option. So somebody like that to fill in the space. Basically, somebody young who could play defensive midfield or at least be developed from defensive midfield to be more of that holding sort of ETH player. Then I think that would have been ideal. To like from what we could see early on, that's probably our missing piece, because right now we're playing a sort of hybrid, counter style that we look slick when we pull it off, but there are times in the game where you kind of, the passes aren't as sweet, they're not connecting,
Yeah. All right. Talking about defensive midfielders, a shambolic window where you're hijacking deals. Mr. Coolum, we come to Chelsea. Now we've got 2 Chelsea fans on here for once, so Siobhan can't complain about us picking on Chelsea. What have you made of Chelsea, who I must say have spent the most money this window? They've outspent Newcastle.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a bit of a roller coaster transfer window for Chelsea. Quite a few highs, quite a few lows. The whole Barcelona business was quite the distraction, particularly with what happened with Rafinha, which looked like it had got over the line. Deal arranged with the clubs. Apparently, personal terms had been signed with both clubs, and that was a bit of a disaster.
Barcelona pulls some levers there, I think.
Yeah. But it's I think we definitely are missing the defensive midfielder, and we'll have to see. Jury's out about Zakaria, how well he's going to adapt to the Premier League. Obviously, Juventus have got quite a number of midfielders, so maybe he hasn't been getting the opportunities there. But
can I jump?
Yeah.
Did you hear what Allegri said about Zakaria? Zakaria said he wasn't skillful enough. He actually said that. So I don't know if it was a dig because he didn't like the player, but I think he's actually a good player. I saw him a lot in Germany when he was playing there, and I think he's actually a good player.
Can he pass the ball 6 meters to the right to Reece James? Because that's all I care about.
He's good. Yeah.
If he can do that, if he can intercept, I don't mind, because Reece James can do all that good passing.
But Siobhan, you're assuming Reece James is playing right fullback, not right centre back.
Reece James can, as long as Reece James is on the pitch, I am not complaining.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, there's no way that Reece James should be anywhere near right centre back. I think that was a stopgap until Fofana came in, because if you look at the centre back situation, we've got Koulibaly, who's quite slow, Thiago Silva, who's quite slow as well,
very slow,
and then Azpilicueta, who's very slow as well. So, and you put the 3 of them in there together, is an absolute joke, and you kind of saw that, I think, in the Leeds game, and so I think bringing Fofana in definitely helps quite a lot. I think he's him and Sterling would be the ones I'm most happy with, I have to say. Obviously, they're probably the most expensive, just about. But Fofana, particularly because of his age, and he's got quite a lot of people bigging him up over the years, talking about he's going to be the next great thing. And it's all going to come down to whether he lets that get to his head, or if he actually gets down and applies himself. And I think it's actually quite good having him coming under the tutelage, if you like, of Thiago Silva and Koulibaly, and hopefully they can um, groom him to effectively become a great centre back himself. So we'll see.
There's one thing I would like to add though is along with all the on-field departures, especially of Antonio Rudiger, the biggest thing that affected us this season was the departure of Peter Cech and Marina Granovskaya, basically with the ownership change, because it's never easy for a new owner to come into a club that too or straight before a transfer window and then not have the old negotiators or talent scouts or whatever there to assist him. So yeah,
Well, he's tried to bring the American way of doing sports deals into the Premier League, and it's been flying over and doing meet and greets with everyone.
everyone, yeah.
He's been busy,
Yeah.
hasn't he?
He's been very busy. So I genuinely hope he gets like 4 days of sleep now, like undisturbed.
I mean, guys, I'd love your from a Chelsea fan perspective. I'd love your take on this. But looking in, I kind of got the impression that possibly due to the unrest that you've mentioned, Shivank, where the whole structure was changing, it felt to me that Chelsea got a little bit sort of spooked by missing out on Rafinha. And then you guys basically just ended up hijacking a bunch of deals. So the Cucurella deal for me just felt like that was a hijack. Did you get that same feeling, Mike?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not. He feels definitely overpriced for that. I don't know how well we had scouted him. He
Agree.
did
Yeah.
a good job for Brighton last year. Obviously, Chilwell's had a lot of injury concerns. I'm not sure what the kind of plan is if Chilwell's back 100% and performing, whether there's space for both of them there. So yeah, I think jury's out.
So apparently Chilwell's still feeling the after effects of his injury, and he's not able to commit to 90 minutes right now. So in the short term, Cucurella is useful, and then I believe he can deputize at left centre back. So I totally agree he's overpriced, but I think he ticks a couple of boxes that we needed right now, especially with Alonso never being the quickest and Emerson being a headless chicken.
Yeah, and to be honest, from what I've seen of him so far, I have been somewhat impressed. And one thing I'll be interested to see what you think about this, Shivank. One of our biggest annoyances for me has been our absolutely shocking corner deliveries and in swingers, and it's just been poor. And I think Cucurella seems to be a lot better than anything we've had over the years.
Hey, gentlemen, 148 corners last year before we scored one. Can you better that?
The way we're headed, we might.
I love it.
No,
Yeah, look,
honestly, can we just have like someone like Fabregas come in just for set pieces? Boy, with their beautiful set pieces.
That's
Ashish is nodding.
Ashish is nodding. He's got a little tear in his eye. The beautiful
Yeah,
days.
I do actually. That man, yeah, I was very upset when he went to Chelsea. I mean, I thought we would go and break the bank, get him back, but not to be. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but what a player he was.
Don't know why he didn't want to work with David Moyes.
Yeah, I wonder why.
And actually, on that, Shivank, I know you were at one point willing to give up part of your salary to see this happen, but the really surprising thing for me with Chelsea is the fact that you didn't go for a centre forward, a real focal point in your attack early on in that window. Now I know the Ronaldo stories were there, but what have you made of that? Like not going for a striker when we know, having finished third last year, to make that step up to Liverpool and City, you needed that focal point.
Honestly, I don't know. Like, okay, I'll take a step back. I am yet to figure out the type of center forward that would work well in a Tuchel system, which is basic, or at least the version of the system that we're playing right now. Because all I see is a lot of passing and not a lot of quick passing between the lines, so to speak. So
It'll be a striker between the molds of Lukaku and Timo Werner, because Lukaku's huge and Werner's was a little guy, so you need someone average height and average mold. Maybe, yeah. So
Maybe a Giroud.
yeah,
Giroud was huge, man.
But I mean, what I mean is, so, and joking aside, and Adam, we'll come to this in a bit, but you've seen Newcastle go out and sign someone like Isak, right? Could Chelsea have gone for someone like that earlier in the window when we knew they needed a focal point like that?
yeah. I'm surprised no one else went in for him. Maybe
I
because
mean,
the price was a little bit high. We probably overpaid for him, but I mean the market's crazy, so you may as well go for someone like him.
I vaguely remember at some stage we were linked with Gabriel Jesus as well, but
Mm.
I don't know what happened where down the line and something.
Mm.
So we were definitely looking at number nines, but at some stage I think we realized we're really short at the back. We've
Mm.
yeah,
we've carried Lukaku. We might as well not carry a number nine this
yeah.
year.
Yeah, I mean, Mike spoke about it earlier, and look, this is not, this could all explode in a couple of weeks' time when Sterling goes away and bangs a hat trick. But if you look at that Leeds game, he had a couple of early chances. He misses those. Leeds go down the other end and score. And I know it was a Mendy howler, but you have a more clinical focal point to your attack, and I think that game's very different. The Southampton game was very similar. When Southampton took that lead and you guys had possession, it just seemed like you didn't have a focal point to that attack. And I'm just baffled. Of all the things in this window that baffle me, Frankie de Jong and our 4-month pursuit is one, and Chelsea not going for a striker is the other.
Yeah.
I think I'll add to that a bit more in saying maybe, and minutes may not be reflective of this, but maybe Tuchel's got faith in Broja.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm
A lot of
curious to
clubs want
see how
him.
Broja is going to play because he did do fairly well at Southampton
Southampton.
and came off the boil towards the end, but I guess the whole team did too.
Mhm.
Yeah, you mentioned Jesus before. I don't know if he would have hit the ground running at Chelsea as well as he has at Arsenal. To be honest, it's a different type of system. We're a bit lethargic in our build-up play, and that we rely on basically Reece James or Sterling effectively making a good run or pass, and um, what we do through the centre of the park is too slow for my liking. It has been for a number of years actually, but yeah, we'll just have to see. I really am struggling to see what kind of striker would fit the mould, and I think taking a gamble on Aubameyang for a cheap price. He's worked with Tuchel before. I don't know if we would have done much better, to be honest. I was actually kind of hoping we might get Ronaldo just for a year as well. I think it's a 1 year issue that we need to get past, and we can think about it next year. Obviously, new owners coming in, trying to work out the structure, sign so many players, and let's see what the market's looking like next year.
Mm, yeah.
It's
Yep.
actually that's I was about to say that, like, the Cucurella purchase from Brighton, it makes Brighton look good. Brighton's really good compared to everybody else, and he's probably up there with had the best transfer window as a you know dark horse. Um, but I think the Lukaku to Inter Milan loan is
Mm.
probably the best thing that you've done all round. Like if we go back to Sterling, I think Sterling is great when he's not the focal point, because then not the pressure is off, but he's got a bit more space to play with. So not having a focal point and then pushing on to Sterling was probably a mistake. Hopefully Aubameyang can fix that. But yeah, like looking at your transfer sheet, definitely I think getting Lukaku, sending him off to Milan and getting some money back to balance the sheet, that was a good deal all around.
Yeah,
I
agreed.
would say one of the worst things that we did or what we didn't do is we didn't move on Christian Pulisic. I've
Yep.
absolutely had it with him. He just doesn't. I mean, even though he won the Champions League final a couple of years back, he missed an absolute
He
sitter.
did.
Sitter.
He did.
Yeah.
He did. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that could, we were just lucky to hold on at the end because
Yeah.
was it Mares almost equalised for them right at the end.
At death, yeah.
Missing sitters like that, and then he did the same in the final. It might have been the FA Cup final last year
Yeah,
against
he did.
Liverpool.
Yeah.
Missed an absolute sitter again, and just the attitude and
He's
Yeah.
injured a lot as well, I think, isn't he?
Yeah.
lots of injuries, and only during the project reset he seemed to do well.
Can I just add, Aubameyang at the end of his Arsenal career was pretty much the same. He couldn't hit a barnyard, unfortunately, and that is when we needed him the most.
Mm.
So hopefully, his holiday at Camp Nou has energized him a little bit, and he's come back a different player. Not many places, of course, just other teams around us. And he bangs them in. But he too, his form was just absolutely rubbish.
Look, lads, we could sit here and take pot shots at Chelsea, the whole night, but we really need to move on. So, Mike, as you sip down that beer, what would you give the Chelsea window? Shivank, we'll come to you in a second. What would you give the Chelsea window out of 10?
I'll give it a 6.5. I think.
Wow.
Had-
That high.
Yeah, I
It's
think
for Lukaku. Yes.
you have to remember, if you look at our defence now, it is looking, on paper at least, very solid. I've got reservations about the goalkeeping situation, of course. But I think Fofana, if he comes right, will be really good. And then you've got Reece James, injuries aside, is probably one of the best talents in England at the moment. And so a couple of positions, I think we're away from having a squad that can really compete for the title. And we'll just have to see. I mean, it's always going to be the case of running into these kind of issues when you're trying to recruit. But I would have given us a 5 if we had not got Aubameyang. And I'm not giving 1.5 marks purely to Aubameyang, but it would have been an absolute disaster had we only gone in with Brozier, because I've got no faith in Havertz to do a job for us up front. So
Yeah. Now, Shivank, Mike said you're a couple of players away. You're on record as early as Thursday saying you needed half a squad. What do you give the Chelsea window?
Purely because I want to deal with integers, 7.
Wow.
Purely because of integers. Look, I said the same thing last year. I'll say the same thing this year. The gap to at Man City was, I think, 19 points. If we finish, Haaland's going to score a ridiculous amount, but let's just take 95 points as a benchmark. If we finish mid 80s with total number of points, I would take that as a above average season, and I'll settle for that. I don't see us competing with Man City in the current with the way they're playing and the way we're playing. But if we can even remotely get close to 85, that's a very good season. All put together, we've signed some really exciting young prospects, as young as 18 or 19 in Carney Chukwuemeka, and then the Inter Milan kid, and Gabriel Slonina from Chicago Fire. We've signed some really good experienced players in Kalidou Koulibaly. We've done that all with an ownership change and everything. So in the grand scheme of things, I think any better would have been amazing, but I'll settle for this.
Yeah, and I just add, we can't really criticize the new owners for lack of trying. I think there was a bit of naivety on their part for thinking they could just pay the money and get deals done.
Yeah.
And they showed their hand too early in some cases and allowed Barcelona to catch wind of who we were going after. And,
Agree.
But
Agree.
We can't really criticize them for trying, and that would have. You look at most other teams and they're complaining because their owners aren't opening up the check.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
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 And
Now,
we've been lucky in that regard. We've had well, Roman was very good in that front, and Todd Bowley's been nothing I can complain about. So, and with the amount of deadwood gone, I'm pretty happy actually. Can't forget that.
yeah,
that's a great segue. Uh, Cash rich club spending about their complaining about their rich owners not spending money. Newcastle, Mr. Duda. This brings us to Newcastle. What?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different angles to Newcastle, considering the previous owner and the lack of spending, the lack of investment, the depleted squad, and after the takeover, the new owners had such a mountain to climb from the get go, um, basically trying to stay up. Last season, last second half of the season, and investing in this the January transfer window to get the right players in order to stay up. So that was one thought process in order for transfers, and then also, and going into this summer, the big theme was FFP. You might laugh and think FFP. Most clubs, Paris Saint Germain. What is FFP? But
Chelsea.
yeah, but these owners are very conscious of it, and I think they are fully aware that Newcastle, because of the controversial owners, um, are more in the spotlight than any other club that's ever been before. So they have to be squeaky clean in everything they do. So FFP, new sponsorships, everything they do, is going to be examined thoroughly. And so, translating that into signing players, they also wanted to make sure that there's going to be the right player with the right mentality that fitted into the system. And going back to the starting point where the club, we were the squad was so depleted that we need so many new players that we can't just spend everything in one go and make mistakes. We can't do an Everton. Everton spent so much money, and look at them now.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
so the owners and the people running the club, they're fully aware of that situation. So we don't want to be an Everton. We don't want to be a Aston Villa. Look at them now. They've overspent. Or even Leicester City to an extent. After they won the title, they invested so much money, and this season they couldn't spend any money because of FFP, I'm
Yeah.
sure, even after selling Fofana. So, and we can't do a Man City. No one can do a Man City these days because under Mike Ashley, our revenues were hopeless. Even some championship clubs were making more revenue or had a better revenue stream than us. And that's only because Mike Ashley cared about his other brand and using Newcastle to promote that brand. So these owners have, they've got a lot of work and they've been very busy. And I'm actually really happy with the signings we've made, even though there's only been four: Isak, Botman, Pope, and Target. I mean, that's good quality there. They've all added to the squad.
Yeah. Adam, before we get onto the signings, I know this is in previous podcasts. This is a point that Kevin has made about ETH. So, it, when you're in this position, and I guess Newcastle on the table at least were in a worse position than what United were in, but when you need so much work, all of that can't come from outside. You can't just go in, and I know Ralph Ragnick said United needed 10 players, but that was never going to happen. You need to improve the players that are there already.
Yeah.
Kevin so brilliantly, I think it was 3 podcasts ago, made this point that you actually need to improve the players that are in the squad. And I think that is the really big difference that I'm seeing when you compare a Newcastle to say an Everton, where Eddie Howe is getting more out of the players that were, and I think Almiron is a great example of this, right? Where you've got a player there who's actually playing a lot better than he was under the previous management. Whereas you look at a lot of the talent that Frank Lampard has at Everton, and they're not really improving, right? And you can't say anymore that he hasn't had time, right? He's had enough time with these players. Any thoughts on
I
what
think
Eddie Howe's doing?
that's a great point. Eddie Howe has been brilliant since he's come into the club. He after he got sacked from Bournemouth, he went away overseas and he followed a lot of other clubs. He studied and he learnt, and he's come into Newcastle refreshed, and he's brought in quite modern ideas, and he has changed the form of a lot of players. Joel Linton, for example,
Mhm.
he was forced into midfield, and now he's become this barnstorming box to box midfielder.
Correct.
Who,
Yeah.
I mean, he was never going to score as a striker, but as a midfielder, he's been terrific. And so we've been playing a 4-3-3, and he's been quite aggressive. If you saw the Man City game, we didn't sit back and try to counter. We actually pushed up the field. And against Liverpool, we did that as well to an extent, going away from home. So he's been quite, he wants to be, in your face, sort of aggressive, pushing forward. And he's actually said that, all the big teams do that. We want to be a big team in the future. So we're trying to change that mentality and that tactical system in order to, press higher up the field. So yeah, Eddie Howe's been awesome.
And I guess this is where we sort of move this conversation onto expectations, right? Because, and I can't believe I'm actually saying this given where you guys were 18 months ago, but Newcastle's form this calendar year is top 6, right? Your form this calendar year is top 6. Now, with the signings that you've brought in, and Isak, I was very impressed with against Liverpool. I thought very unlucky not to get that second goal, and if he gets that second goal, I think it's game over, right?
Yeah.
What are your expectations for the season?
Personally, there's the obvious top 6, and they're still the top 6. Man City, Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham, Arsenal. That's still the top 6. But for Newcastle, for me, it's that next group.
Mhm.
I want to. It's between us, West Ham, Aston Villa,
Wolves.
Brighton, Wolves. It's that mini league in the middle. And for me, I want to finish ahead of those guys. So whenever I look at results over the weekend, I always look at those ones first. Those teams around. I know.
Are you saying you're not looking at Spurs results? Because I don't believe that.
No, definitely not. No, but yeah. So, and Everton and Villa started very slowly. I don't think Everton's going to be in the conversation. But Crystal Palace, that mini league in the middle of the table is actually quite big. There's a lot of a lot of teams have spent a lot of money, and the gap in quality between a lot of teams is closing really fast.
I think we made the same point on the Premier League preview episode of the podcast as well. The mini league is actually more interesting. The top 2, everybody knows who they're going to be. There's no competition there. We also have a good idea of who's going to be relegated. The mini league in the middle is where it's the most fun right now as a neutral.
I mean, I know Adam's named those 4 clubs, but you look at Leeds and Brentford in that league as well, right? I mean, look, we got done by Brentford, and Chelsea got rolled by Leeds. And these are 2 clubs who, look, may not have spent a lot of money, but the money they've spent very smartly, right? I think that league in the middle, I think, is what sets the Premier League. It sets the Premier League apart. I think if you look at Europe's top 5 leagues, there are elite clubs in all of them, but that kind of cluster from about 8 to 14 is where I think the Premiership excels.
I agree. Yeah, and on any given day, those teams could probably come away with a good result against one of the top teams. But even relegation, I honestly, right now, I'd say Bournemouth. But then who else is favoured to go down? Because is Everton going to stay down? As much as I want them to go down, I don't think they will. Who else will go down? Fulham are looking good. Nottingham Forest have signed 21 players, and they're looking good. So it's hard to predict.
Honestly, watching Leicester this morning and some of the body language, and it's interesting. This is a transfer podcast, and Leicester signed their first outfield player a few hours ago. To me, it looks like Brendan Rodgers is dead man walking. I think Leicester might be in a bit of trouble.
I think it's between him and Slippy G. For the next
Yeah,
one.
and
Yeah.
look, that's another one, right? Look, I think Villa's form has just fallen. It's interesting because Adam mentioned both Everton and Villa, who kind of signed inspirational English attacking midfielders to motivate their players, and Newcastle went and signed Eddie Howe, who was the polar opposite, right? And I would say between those three, it's looking like at this point that Newcastle probably made the right choice.
Oh, people were laughing when they said, "Oh, why didn't we go for Gerrard? Why didn't we go for Lampard?"
I think every third message I was getting from Ashish was, how did Newcastle decide to sign him?
I'll be honest, I was most likely in the same camp. Like the Eddie Howe signing made no sense to me, but I'm happy to be proven wrong on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, they were linked with Conte at that time, right?
Yeah, they were.
And what's his name? The ex-Arsenal manager.
Via.
Unai Emery.
Emery.
Yeah.
Good evening. Good
yeah,
evening.
we actually yeah, we were close to signing him, but then he pulled out last second. So yeah, but I think overall this summer and going forward, we're going to be we want to make signings, quality signings every transfer window. We don't want to, January, I think we'll sign one or two players. Next summer, we'll sign three or four, decent players, and it's a slow process because our squad was so bad that we couldn't sell anyone. St. Maximin is probably our biggest asset going into the takeover, and now we won't sell him. But everyone else, we're letting go for free because they're not worth anything, and we just have to get them off the books.
That sounds very familiar.
Do I take it that you don't rate Callum Wilson very highly?
No, I rate him. I do, except he's always injured. He's honestly half the season he'll be on the in the physio room. So
All right, lads. I'm just conscious we've gone over an hour. We'll quickly do Liverpool because I know Newcastle have recently played them. Adam, just thoughts on, and we'll Kevin. I think you've really drawn the short straw on this one, my friend. Being a United fan, we'll come to you after Adam. But what were your thoughts on Liverpool, Adam?
Nunez was a great signing. People were wondering if he would fit in the system if he would work in the Premier League, but he's quite a big, fast guy. Obviously, he lost his cool and got sent off in that one game. But I think long term he'll be really good. He won't score as many goals as Haaland, but I think he'll do a good job. And Fabio Carvalho, young player coming in. Obviously, he scored the winner against us. So not too much business, but I think they've done okay.
I was going to say one thing about Liverpool, though. We have to touch on how big a loss is Mane going to be for them.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that.
Great point, Mike. Great point. I could not agree more.
I don't think Nunez can actually replace Mane. Well, he might replace him in.
It might replace the goals.
Goals, yeah, exactly. But the overall contribution, nah. Mane was massive.
And actually, just on this, Shavank, your point about Nunez, I know it was on the Premiership preview that I picked him rather cheekily to be the flop of the season, and that red card was kind of justifying it, but. Just the impact, we spoke to Adam earlier about Richarlison potentially impacting Son. That dynamic where you've now got, a striker who is quite big, quite physical, likes to play central, likes the ball into feet. What sort of impact that may have on Salah? Is this? Do you guys see that being an issue?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Because again,
they looked. Salah looked better when they didn't have Nunez on the field.
Agree.
Like Firmino's sort of unlocked him a little bit there, and he's looked a bit flat. And I think I said this before, but I think that the combination is always a concern. The three of them, him, Luis Diaz, Salah, and
Firmino.
Firmino. They look quite good. And
We've still got Jota to come back as well, of course.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I was about to say. Like, how do you have a team where, because Jota needs minutes, so where's the minutes gonna come from, and who do they start with? That's another question. Because like Nunez looked good when he came off the bench, and everybody was a bit tired. I think he's not good when he plays with his head, pun
Yeah,
intended.
this is where I think, Kevin, this is quite a good point, because this is where I think the dynamic changes. So I think in Jota, you've got a player who could play right across that front three. Yeah, very similar to, say, Salah and Mane. And I think that's where their attack almost went to another level. When they signed Jota, that front three just became so much more fluid. I think with Nunes, the dynamic changes a little bit, because it's you can't. I don't. And look, I might be wrong. I haven't seen him play that much. But Nunes to me doesn't seem like the type of player who could play off the wing. He feels like a player who very much needs to be central, like Haaland, like Isak is at Newcastle.
Yeah.
And so I do think you're right. How do you fit Jota into that? Because does that mean you play Jota off the left sometimes when you're resting Diaz? Do you play him off the right sometimes when you're resting Salah, or do you play him through the middle sometimes when you're resting Nunes? Or what is now their favored front three? I don't think I know that.
Neither.
Can you play like the one thing I was thinking about? Is it worthwhile because Salah is such a great player? Is it worthwhile? I can't even think. Like, I mean, any other team in the competition would not try and reduce Salah's minutes unless it was for trying to prevent injury. So even thinking about him being off for last 15 or something like that, it's probably the second 30. But coming back to it, is it worthwhile maybe restructuring that where you play Salah? Maybe you move him a bit further back and then have him inject later on. Is Luis Diaz good enough to be on the field with all three of them?
I think
sure.
going back to Mike's point, I think Luis Diaz, as good as he is not Sadio Mane. I think he is a more predictable player. Now, I'm not saying he's not going to do well and he's not going to have a great season, but I'm just talking about that dynamic again. To me, Sadio Mane was just on another level. I think his pace, his ability to pass and go, his ability to be instrumental in terms of bringing other players into the game. So very often what we would see with Sadio Mane is especially when he played central at times last year, he would sort of make that run that would create space for Diaz or Salah, right? Diaz to me isn't that sort of player, right? And he likes the ball at feet. He likes to do that old kind of cut in and shoot off his right foot. I do wonder what that dynamic is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
All right, gentlemen. So we've got to wrap this up now. What we are going to do in just closing this is we're going to come around one by one, and we're going to talk about who won the transfer window, right? So who do you think won this window? You can't say Man City because that's the boring answer, right? So I want a different answer to Man City. We'll start off with Ashish. Who won the window?
Yeah, that's a very good question. A lot of people would put Arsenal up the top there, but it's hard to say for me, really. I'm not convinced. I think Newcastle, in particular, with the ownership and the financial backing they've got, I think they haven't gone overboard. They haven't started throwing silly money around. They've been quite, I'd say, efficient with their finances and brought the right players in. So my cheeky bet's going to be on Newcastle being right up there.
Wow. Newcastle winning a transfer window. Adam, did you think this would happen in your lifetime?
Last season we failed for loan bid for Hamza Chowdhury. So a lot has changed in 12 months.
All right, Adam, we'll come to you. Who won the window?
Actually, I'm gonna say Brighton. I'm gonna steal what Kevin said at
That's
the
my
start
pick as well.
at the start of the podcast, because they've made so much money from selling players.
90 million.
It's crazy. Cucurella, Basuma.
Basuma. More
It,
pay.
yeah, exactly. And they've signed. I really think Brighton overall have the best setup in terms of recruitment. They're very smart, and I'm so happy we've got Dan Ashworth from Brighton, the
Mhm.
sporting director, because the
Mm.
setup they have with the owner and the scouting that they do, they get some cheap players, and honestly, they work out. Casado is another one, the midfielder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trust me, next summer someone's going to go big for him, or even in January. He's a
Well,
good player.
we were already in that little 3-day period where we were linked with. We went from De Jong to Rabiot to Casemiro. We
Mm.
had an 8-hour period where it was Casado, who we could have signed 6 months ago for £6 million, but
Yeah,
we
yeah.
but we refused to.
Yeah. So and they keep making these types of signings. Like they've signed this Julio Enciso from Libertad on 9.5 million. I'm reading it off. I'm sure he's going to be good. I'm sure he's going to be Levi Colwell for on loan. They're very smart. So I think they've won, and just just my opinion.
Shavank, I think you tend to agree there, and
Yeah.
Levi Colwell, I think you called us out 2 podcasts ago. Very smart signing for them.
Hey, they've got Levi Colwill and Billy Gilmore from Chelsea for a combined £9 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thankfully, Levi Colwill's on loan because I rate that kid really, really, really highly.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And you guys
So-
got Cucurella in return,
Yeah.
and you lost money on that.
Well, if we win a Champions League, then what money lost?
Mike, I'm hoping you've got something slightly different here. There seems like a Brighton theme to this.
Don't say Spurs.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, I would probably have to say Arsenal would be up there for me, purely
Wow.
because
Wow.
I think they've recruited the players they need. But
Very well.
also, they've managed to hold on to the likes of Saliba.
Mhm.
They've got Nketiah still there. A lot of, I mean, a lot of young players and other teams would kick off and say, "I want to leave because I want to get minutes." But he seems to be happy enough to stick around for the time being. So I think they're doing, compared to where they were last year, I think they've probably made the biggest inroads on where it's going. Obviously, still early days, but I think
Yeah.
yeah.
I do agree. I think quite similar to the what we're seeing at Newcastle with Eddie Howe. You can see that the players that were there a year ago have clearly improved. Yeah, you look at Saka, you look at Martinelli.
Mm.
Another one that I've been really impressed with. I completely wrote him off when they signed him, but Ramsdale. I think
Yeah.
he's a player who surprised us all. I think so. The signings that they've made, plus the youngsters that they've brought through, and then you throw in someone like Zinchenko, and you throw in a Gaby Jesus. It does seem like a very good mix. And closing this out, Kevin.
Yeah. Look,
Clearly,
you know
we
my
didn't win
thoughts
the
on.
window, right? I
No.
mean,
You know my thoughts on Man U. Overall, I think Brighton did, but I do like Forest's bravery. Like I like
21
the
players.
idea. You just chuck it at the wall, see what happens, and then maybe next season get rid of those players that you don't want, and then you might have a team. So that approach. The brute force is like the coder in me always going to go back to. Well, you can solve a problem with brute force, no matter. It's just about time, right?
It,
How much
it,
time?
it's like password spraying, right? Something's gonna stick.
100%. So, look, Brighton. I think Crystal Palace has had a good window as well. And yeah, look, I like to see. I'm with you. The middle of the table is where all the action is, and I'm looking forward to this season from that perspective. And I've been really enjoying the fact that Brighton and a handful of other teams are bringing that. I would say the 4 out of the 6 down to their level a little bit, and it's getting a little bit closer, and that's just better for the EPL overall, and it's better for we have less games that just 4-0 blowouts, or was it 9-0 blowouts?
Yeah, Mike, you had something to add there?
Yeah, I'd just like to maybe put a counter argument to the whole Brighton respect. Obviously, did well on the balance sheet point of view and outbound transfers, but who have they really bought of great note? I mean, to lose the likes of Kukurea, Basuma, Mope, that is quite a bit of depth that they're losing, and I don't know if it's really being replaced significantly. It's all good and well getting good transfer fees, but you have to actually replace them. You've got to spend the money as well. So great start to the season by them, but I'd like to see where they're at come midpoint.
I do agree, and it's for this reason that I'm going to go a bit different. And look, this is not a wind up, guys, but this is probably the choice that's going to wind up the most of the people on here. But I actually think Spurs won this window. I think if you look at where they were last year, where they got into the top 4 off the back of Harry Kane and Heung-min Son, and they really needed to go out and sign some serious depth. I think they've gone and done that, and I think more so than any other club, United included, they've probably really backed the manager here. They've signed the players that he's wanted, and if you look at on paper at least, you look at Ivan Perisic on a free. You look at Fraser Foster's another one, right? Like we had periods last year where Hugo Lloris was looking a little bit shaky. I think they've got a very, very good goalkeeper there who's probably going to be challenging for top spot. Basuma, we've spoken about. Richarlison, great signing. Jed Spence is another one, right? Look, it's part of the shit show that's been Barcelona, but they've got Longley on a loan from Barcelona, right? That's another shrewd piece of business that they've done. I think by some distance, if you look at the clubs in the top 6, City aside, obviously, I think they've stolen a march on Liverpool, United, Chelsea, and Arsenal. I think they've in the top 6 at least. I think they've totally crushed it, and I do agree with Mike. I think they are going to be looking at it. City are going to be top 2. I think the other club that's looking pretty certain to be in that top 4 for me is Spurs.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think we're up to 1.5 hours, so we've almost had an entire football game worth of. If we go any longer, we'll be in injury time, and there'll be a 98th minute winner for Liverpool. Adam Mather may jump on just to stick the knife into Adam Duda. So we'll probably go on, Siobhan.
I said can't have that. Can't have
we can't.
2 days.
I think we'll call it full time. Look, it's been lovely to have you guys on. We'll probably look to do more of this type of thing with the World Cup looming. Obviously, the Champions League coming up as well. So I've really enjoyed this, guys. To all our listeners out there, we hope you've enjoyed it as well. If you've got any feedback, pop it in the comments. At the Back Pass Pod on the socials. Let us know what you thought. Probably leave it there.